Okay, welcome to the Stellify Podcast. And today I'm joined by someone whose work has been essential for anyone wanting to understand how our reality is shaped from behind the curtain. John Hamer is the author of groundbreaking books such as The Falsification of History, Behind the Curtain, and The Falsification of Science. And for over 2 decades, John has been exposing the mechanisms of control, false flag events, psychological operations, and the narrative management that keeps societies compliant. And with the UK government now announcing mandatory digital ID and fresh fear-based events unfolding in Manchester yesterday, John's insights couldn't be more timely, to be honest. His research connects the dots between manufactured crisis and the steady erosion of our freedoms. So on this podcast, I hope to be exploring how these strategies work, why they're accelerating, and what we can do maybe to protect our sovereignty in an age of engineered consent. So John, thank you so much for spending some time with me this evening. I really appreciate it. You are without doubt one of the most prolific, I think, writers on this subject. And I believe, I've listened to quite a lot of you over the past 12 months to 2 years. The Princess Diana events is what woke you up initially. And obviously, I think it was a friend of yours, wasn't it? He was in France at the time, and they saw the original news clipping or the news report of Diana being walked into an ambulance. I mean, I never saw that, to be honest, but I'd heard of it, and that's shows how crazy this propaganda goes. So, where did that take you next, then, John? When you heard that, was that something that sparked you inside to do some research?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks very much for that lovely, introduction. It's made me blush, really. Bless you. It was Dinah's death. People who have seen me on podcasts before will know this. I tell this story till it's just, ad infinitum. But for those who've not heard it before, I'll do a very brief introduction on it. And that was that, as you say, I was told by some friends who were in Paris at the time, when they went back to their hotel room, switched on the TV, the first images they saw were Princess Diana being walked into the ambulance. Now, we were told, of course, that she never regained consciousness, or very briefly, she just muttered a couple of words and then that was it. So it totally contradicted the official story. So, I mean, I was a bit skeptical about it, as you would be, as most people probably would be. Nevertheless, it encouraged me to start looking into things. And from there, it just went, I just went down so many rabbit holes very, very quickly. Well, I said very, very quickly. It was a slow start, okay? For the first few years, I was still working for a living. I work for a living now, but not doing what I did before. I work for a living writing and researching and public speaking. But I think the next major event that came along was I know the next major event that came along was obviously 9/11, and I knew straight away that was just all theatre, and that's what it was, and that's what most of these events, these false flags are. All of the false flags, obviously, because of the title, are theatre, and so it just kind of progressed from there. It was a slow build up. At first, I started writing articles, and one or two websites picked them up and ran with them. And then eventually somebody said, why don't you start writing books? So I did. I've always had a penchant for English. I've been pretty good at English all my life. And it just seemed like a natural progression. So I became an author by about 2012. My first book was published, Falsification of History, and it's just really blossomed from there. I've now got 9 books to my name, some of which you mentioned. Thank you. But it's been an interesting journey over the last 28 years, mate.
I can imagine. I remember my awakening, and it was a bit esoteric, but it was like it took me to 9/11. Now I was bought into that narrative. So when it happened, I'd been to the Twin Towers the year before. And I'd been up the top of them. I'd been around them in a helicopter, so I was quite almost like emotionally attached. Yeah. And then the year later, when they came down, I'd already booked to go to New York City for 2 weeks over Christmas and New Year. So I spent time with like firefighters, and things like that, and around Ground Zero and stuff. And I went to Times Square where they had this big procession, and Giuliani was there, and this, that, and the other. But I was like, I bought into it all at the time because, like I say, I was quite emotionally into that.
Yeah, sure.
And then when I had my awakening, which was interesting, was 2012. That was when I actually started to wake up. I was like, oh my God, we've been duped. Like, how badly duped have we been by our own? But how and what, why do they think these tactics of false flags are so effective? Because they're doing it on our own people, and why are we so taken in by the spell, do you think?
Yeah, well, it's human psychology, isn't it? I mean, these people are not stupid. They're evil, but they're not stupid. They know exactly how to manipulate the human psyche, which levers to pull, which buttons to press. And they do it very, very successfully. And the reason that they do it, very broad brush reason why they do it and why it's so successful, is because they, as I say, they're masters of the human psyche. So they know exactly how to play us and how to program us. But the reason that they do it is because they have an agenda. Okay, they have an ongoing agenda which has been in place for a long, long time, and it evolves as the years go by. But the only way that a few thousand people, and there are only a few thousand of them, can control an alleged 8 billion, I'm not sure about that, but anyway, that's what they tell us, 8 billion. The only way that that's such a small number can control so many of us is by creating a fake reality. And instilling us with fear, which is what all these operations are designed to do. It's pumping fear into our minds. And what does fear do to people? It makes them clamor for protection. It's like the old Hegelian dialectic, isn't it? Problem, reaction, solution. Create a problem, wait for the reaction, then very kindly offer the solution. So that's in a very small nutshell what it's all about and why they do it. Yeah.
It is successful. Obviously, we saw in 2020, didn't we, how well they use fear. I mean, you've written a book on that as well, haven't you, John? But they use fear so well. I mean, that ticker tape of horror that you would see on the mainstream news, there's so many cases, so many deaths, blah, blah, and the general public, if they're just getting that in their psyche, where else can they go? Because when you've got that narrative is pinged straight in. Like you say, it's psychology, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, those messages, those 3-phrase messages that they used with different colors as well, they were using something called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So I can't remember what the words were. It was something like "stay home," save the
lives, or something. Yeah.
I can't remember what it was now, but it's all very, very carefully planned out. Again, using our own psychology, natural psychology against us. And that's what neuro-linguistic programming is all about. If anybody didn't know what that is, I suggest you do some research on that because it's a very interesting topic. And they use it all the time.
How do you think people like us have seen through it then, and we start questioning it? I mean, I know that mine was sort of, it was like I said, it was a strange one where I was given a numerology. It was a bit of a, I won't get into it because people who watch my channel have heard it before. I don't want to bore people with my story, I'm here to talk to you. But it's like, it took me, I had an 11/11 moment that took me to 9/11, effectively. That's what it took me. And then to the corruption of this world, be it then JFK, be it the Titanic, all these that you've actually written about, funnily enough, where I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And how does such a small amount of people, like you just said, control the narrative and all these bloodlines and everything else? But they use, like you say, NLP, they use slogans like "Build Back Better," all 3. And they stay with you, don't they? It's a marketing ploy.
It is, and it's stuff that they use in marketing commercial products as well. It's exactly the same thing, using like slogans and jingoistic messages that really do stick in your brain. And people think, well, that wouldn't affect me, but it really does, and I wouldn't exempt myself from that either. Excuse me. So it's a very, very subtle play. And of course, another thing that I didn't mention, and again, I guess most people watching this now know this, but it's worth mentioning that they control 100% or 99%, let's be generous, of the media. And the media is constantly backing up their agenda and backing up their false flags with a pretense that it is actual factual and it's really happening. So yeah, they've got, people say to me, well, if all this was going on, all this conspiracy stuff, the big whistleblowers coming forward. I say, yeah, and there are. But the big problem that whistleblowers have is that they don't have a platform. Where they're going to go, places like your good self, this podcast, things like the Light newspaper. But the coverage is absolutely minute compared to the mainstream. It's like a pinprick on the back of a blue whale. It really is that kind of analogy. So again, this is why their tactics succeed, because they've got a massive, machine pumping out this information all the time.
It's incredible that there are people like us that have seen through it. Really.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you asked that question, why do people like us see through it, and why are there so few? I don't know why there are so few, but again, this is a question I've pondered on for years and years and years. I've had numerous discussions with people about it, and to be honest, mate, we can't really come to a conclusion. In fact, the best explanation I had was quite an esoteric one. And I'm kind of leaning towards that. And it's that we're old souls and we've been around the block a few times and we know what's what. And that's the most convincing explanation I've ever heard, to be honest.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. Of all the events that you've researched, John, and I know that's quite an extensive amount, is there the one which has shocked you the most when you've uncovered its true story? Is the one that really stuck out?
Well, obviously Diana, because it was the first one, and it's that woke me up. But all the others, to be honest, once you get into that mindset of knowing what to look for and understanding what the agenda is and what they're playing at, nothing shocks you anymore. I know it's a sad thing to say in a way. Maybe the moon landings was another one. That was a very early one as well, and I quickly realised that was the biggest load of bollocks ever spouted. So yeah, that was probably the answer to your question, mate. But yeah, honestly, nothing surprises me now. I'm just, I don't want to sound glib about it, but you come across these events, as you put them, and you just think, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm not surprised. Don't surprise me. As shocking as they might be, it's like you become immune to them somehow.
It's funny that you say that, because yesterday's event in Manchester, which I'll touch on in a bit, but I made a post pretty quickly after it of, it's sad that I'm not surprised when these things happen, when they've got an agenda to put through. And that is really sad that people, now when we say false flag, some people think that these are made up events, but it's not the case generally. People do sadly will lose lives, will be harmed, because they're not bothered, are they? They don't give a monkeys about lives. We're just numbers, aren't we, to these controllers?
Yeah. I mean, we're just collateral damage. I think that's a very sad indictment. That phrase actually exists in the first place, but they often refer to us as collateral damage, of course. And by the way, mate, I said to you off air before we came on, I'm not well up on current events because to be honest, I want to explode sometimes when I just catch snippets on the news. So I've absolutely no idea what happened in Manchester yesterday. I just refuse to watch the news. I usually come at these events from about a week or a month later. So I'm a bit behind the times with current affairs, I'm afraid. So what did happen in Manchester?
Well, so yesterday, let me bring up. I did a bit of a blog post earlier on actually, and it might just help me kind
Right.
of explain it a little bit. So,
Okay.
yesterday in Manchester, in the Jewish quarter, really, there was obviously yesterday was Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day in the
Right.
Jewish calendar,
Right.
and there was a man allegedly named. This is the guy that they killed. So what happened was there was two stabbings. This is what we were told initially. There were two stabbings, and a man with bombs, allegedly named Jihad al-Shami. So it's got. I thought that was a bit weird in itself. That he's someone's called Jihad, and he's got Sham in his name as well. I thought it was a bit weird. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing
But
suspicious about that, is there at all?
no, no, I thought that was really strange. Anyway, the police killed him. But this is all over Twitter, mind you. The
Right.
actual video footage of this man being gunned down. There's a person lying there in blood, and it comes out today, John. Apparently, that the police they not only shot this killer, alleged killer, who also plowed his car into people as well. The police have shot a guy who was closing the door at the synagogue, because this was at a synagogue, and they've killed him, and then they've shot someone else by accident as well. So I'm not quite sure if this guy is actually killed. I don't know the full story now because it seems to have changed a little bit today. The narrative's
Yeah.
changed a little bit. But what I have noticed from it was the mainstream. So lately, Keir Starmer announced that the Gaza Strip or Palestine was a state that is recognised by the UK. So it was
Yeah.
almost like you could almost sense something coming, especially with the rollout of the digital ID announcement as well, the mandatory digital ID announcement. There's some kind of false flag, and I think it's Gareth Ike recently. I think he posted about 3 weeks ago. It's going to be the false flag kind of season. If you
Right.
can feel you
Yeah.
can feel it, and he's bang on really because this has happened, and it's the mainstream media. A lot of the mainstream media are jumping all over Starmer because of his stance with Palestine and saying that Jews are under attack and they're under fear, and living in fear and this, that, and the other. So obviously we can't talk too much on YouTube because anti-Semitic kind of description, you know how this works. When we can't say anything, we can't say a boo to a goose, but it clearly seems to me all these agendas, being a false flag expert. I mean, I was like, I'm not a false flag expert, but I saw it and I went, okay, I'm not saying this has not happened. This guy's not been
No, no,
shot.
it will have happened in some form or other. Maybe not exactly as they describe it, but something will have happened. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like that guy in America that was recently shot, wasn't he? As well in the neck, the Charlie Kirk
Yeah.
incident
Yeah.
as well. But these are events, aren't they, that are weaponized against the
Yeah.
people in some way politically, and with all
Yeah.
this digital infrastructure and transhumanism push, you can see where it's rolling, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Again, as soon as you said all that, I just if that had been me hearing it on the mainstream news, I would have just rolled my eyes and switched the channels, to be honest, because stuff like that, it just really it pisses me off, to be honest. I find it very hard to deal with. Not that it affects my life anymore. At one time, it did.
Mm.
I used to, wake up screaming almost, with nightmares over it all. When I first got into this world of truth, I didn't know anybody else who felt the same way as me. I felt like I was, screaming at walls almost sometimes. People just wouldn't listen. And I was going to say very quickly, but it wasn't quickly. I very slowly learned not to go at it like a bull in a china shop and to do it in a much more circumspect way. But it took a long time. And while I was going through that process, like a lot of people who've, recently woken up, I don't really like that phrase, but become
Yeah, Everywhere.
They don't know what to do with the information. It's like, the world has been turned upside down, and that's exactly what I was like 28 years ago, 25 years ago, even maybe 20 years ago, because it took a long time. But now I'm much more circumspect about it, and I've got it all in perspective, and I don't let it prey on my mind. What I tend to do, and this, people ask me this all the time when I do stand-up talks, mainly. They come up to me after and say, how do you cope with all this stuff, John? It just overwhelms me, and I don't know what to do. And I say, well, the only way that I can deal with it as well is just compartmentalize it in my mind. Just when I'm not working, when I'm not doing this, when I'm not writing, when I'm not researching, when I'm not public speaking, I just shove it to the back of my mind and pretend that all is well with the world. And I think that's the only way you can cope, to be honest. You love your family, respect your friends, look after, just keep your own life in a little box away from all this. Only bring it out when you need to. Don't let it dominate your life. It's so easy for it to do that. And it did for me for many years. And I almost had a nervous breakdown through it, to be honest. But that's another story. But it's very difficult to do at first, but it's not impossible, and it probably just take a bit of practice. But I'm kind of blasé about it now. And the other thing is that we mentioned it earlier on about the fear factor. They're constantly bombarding us with fearful events, so that we're terrified and we go clamoring to them for protection. Basically, that's what it's about. The only thing you have to fear is fear itself, because I'll tell you, a lot of the stuff that the mainstream media pump out and that they tell us is going to happen, and oh my God, it's this, it's that, it's the other, never happens. I'm not even convinced that digital IDs will happen. I'm that blasé about it, because I've seen so many other things over the years be, promulgated, and then everybody's going, oh God, no, not the. And then it never happens in the end, because either there's a public uproar about it, and that does work, by the way, or the thing just dies a death through lack of interest. So there's lots and lots of stuff in the past that has gone on that never happened. So all I would say to people is don't live in fear. Just don't. Right. Don't listen to the mainstream news unless you really want to. But I wouldn't advise it.
You've certainly mentioned some very important points, and I think people need to feel grounded at times. I think it becomes addictive when you start falling into these rabbit holes. I know it was for me initially. I was like, oh my God, it's like, from JFK to like I say, the Titanic. I know you've written all about it. The Mandela effect came into my peripheral at that point as well. I'm like, what is this place, and what is this world we find ourselves in? And why are people so fucking evil, and what is wrong? Why can't we just get along, so you find yourselves down this, and it can be a painful exercise. And I've noticed in the truther movement now, because of 2020 was a catalyst for a lot of people's awareness, I think.
Absolutely.
Without a shadow of a doubt. But I think now people have become so distrusting, so paranoid. That itself is something we're going to have to be careful with, because that's a psychology they'll use against us as well. So
it's all engineered. That is all engineered. That's how they want us, because they want us. That's the problem with the truth movement. The fact that it's so disparate. There's so many little splinter groups, and nobody's singing from the same hymn sheet. I get criticized by truthers because I don't believe a particular element that they believe, or I contradict something that, there's this infighting going on all the time. I'm sure it happens with the other side as well, but they present this image of being much more coordinated than we ever are. And I've blocked loads of truthers on Twitter, because they're just so closed-minded about everything. And I think that's important. That's an important point as well. You've got to be prepared to change your opinion about something if you're presented with evidence to the contrary. And I've always lived by that maxim, and I don't make no apologies for it. And I do change my mind. Some of the things I wrote about in Falsification of History, for example, I don't believe anymore. I don't want to go into details about them, but that was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And you evolve. Your own view of the world evolves as time goes by, and especially in this particular sphere, because you're always coming across new information, new research that people have done that you think, yeah, that's spot on. That I never thought of that. And the only way to deal with that is not to reject it like a lot of people do, is to actually embrace it and either create a rational argument as to why it's not true or accept it. Simple.
Yeah, I've always said that it's very important to evolve with that, because we can't always be right. And why should we, if we find ourselves protecting everything that we believe is right, we're falling into a cult.
Yeah, and you'll never grow. You'll never grow.
You'll never grow. I mean, I was in a marriage where I was wrong every single day for 10 years. I'm used to being wrong. I'm quite happy to be wrong. You know what I mean? I wanted to be wrong in 2020. Yeah. I really wanted to be wrong in 2020. And, I don't think we were wrong. But
I'm absolutely certain we weren't wrong. I've just contradicted myself there, but I'm pretty confident about that one.
I'm pretty confident as well, John, I'll be honest. But, but yes, I totally agree with you. And this is where the falling out is starting to happen. I've seen it on Twitter. Twitter is a very toxic playground, I found.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's dangerous. It's dangerous for your mental health as well. So people have got to be mindful on what they're putting out there, because they're actually harming others. And ultimately, I think the majority of us want the same outcome from all this nonsense that they're throwing at us, and that's some peace and fucking quiet and some freedom. Thank you very much. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
But the truth is, unfortunately, are finding themselves, and I understand the paranoia, John. We've been lied to. About everything, haven't we? Otherwise, if we hadn't, you wouldn't have had any books to write, would we? We've been lied to about everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's staggering, for those who are new to this situation. It's staggering exactly what has been faked and falsified and lied about over the millennia, not just over the last few years. I'm talking about going back to the beginning of human civilization, really, back to Roman and Greek times. There were false flags going on then.
Yeah.
So, it's been a standard requisite of the ruling classes, and why change a winning formula? They know it works. Why change it?
Too true. So can we possibly get into, obviously, one of the big events that you've written 2 books about? I believe one's a novel as well, and I think that and that's the Titanic.
Right.
And my missus, when we got together, she's a bit of a Titanic buff, actually, and there was, where we live in Lancashire, there was actually an opening of a Titanic museum, and she started kind of volunteer work there at some point, because she was obsessed with the Titanic, and then when our awakening situation was materializing, and then we went, hold on a minute. This is a bit strange, So all these rich guys that didn't go on the so-called Titanic, where was this leading to? So I don't know if you can. I know you said you've written extensively about it, but so we're saying in your books anyway that this wasn't the Titanic that sank, and obviously this event led to a major change financially in the Western world.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, how long have we got? Because I once did a 4-hour podcast on this and didn't cover everything.
Did you?
That's the extent of the deception. But it was it basically was an insurance scam combined with a means by which they got rid of the opposition to the Federal Reserve as well. So it's all in the book, RMS Olympic. The book is called because it was Titanic was actually switched with her almost identical twin sister ship, RMS Olympic. Olympic was the first one to come off the production line, if you can call it a production line, and about a year later, Titanic. But in that intervening year, Olympic had 3 really bad accidents, and one in particular, the third one, was devastating. I mean, she collided on a I think it was about a 4th voyage with a British battleship called my God, my brain's gone. HMS Hawke in the Solent, just off the Isle of Wight, and the damage was devastating. They didn't realise at first how bad it was, because the only dry dock they could get her to was in Belfast, where she was built, because she was the biggest ship in the world. There wasn't another dry dock anywhere big enough to take her. So they patched her up in Southampton, which took about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks anyway. And when they got her back to Belfast, which took a long time to get it to Belfast because it was so badly damaged, but they got her there. They got her in the dry dock, and they realised that she was a wreck. She was not repairable, and they actually declared her a wreck. The documentation is there. She was declared a wreck. And of course, what had happened, you see, J.P. Morgan, who owned the shipping line, the White Star Line, as well as several other shipping lines, he had pumped his massive personal fortune into this because he thought this was a real winner, but he needed a quick return. Now, not only was Olympic absolutely damaged beyond economic repair now, but she'd been out of action for several weeks, and prior to that, in other minor incidents, losing propellers and things like that. And so they weren't recouping the money. She wasn't playing a trade back and forth across the Atlantic. The shares of White Star Line were going down the tubes because of it. And Morgan was desperate for a solution. And when he found out that the keel was bent, which it was, I mean, a bent keel on a ship, that's it. You can't fix a bent keel. You'd have to start at the bottom, lay a new keel, and start again from the bottom. So it's cheaper to build a new ship. And he knew this. But at this point in time, Titanic was almost complete. It was probably about 4 months away from completion. So what they decided to do, and again, I'm just not just making this stuff up. I've got lots of evidence for this, and which I cover in the books in way more detail. This is just a thumbnail sketch, basically. Yeah. So what they did was they switched the identities of the ships. Of course, Olympic wasn't insurable anymore, so they changed the identity. They made that into Titanic, patched it up as best they could. And they didn't do a very good job of it, because a lot of the passengers said, this is not a new ship. The scuffs on the lino, and all the transit crew that took the Titanic down from Olympic Titanic, it had become the Titanic, took it down from Belfast to Southampton for its maiden voyage. They refused to join the maiden voyage. They knew something, and not one of them signed on. I tell a lie, actually, 2 of them signed on, but they jumped ship in Cove, Queenstown, which is the second stop. Cherbourg, Cove, New York. So the 2 that did actually sign on were just looking for a passage back to Ireland, I think. So they jumped ship in Ireland. But yeah, it's a very, very long, complicated story. And the other element to it, there's kind of 2 threads to it. I think J.P. Morgan saw a chance to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because he was one of the Federal Reserve conspirators, and he was leading the campaign to get the Federal Reserve installed. Because for those who don't understand what the Federal Reserve is, it's the American central bank. But until that point in time, America had no central bank, and because it had no central bank, it had no national debt. Because that's where national debts come from. I don't want to get into too convoluted a story here, but so Morgan and all his co-conspirators, the high financiers in America at the time, saw an opportunity for a Bank of England style institution that was responsible for creating the money, and they did it under the auspices of it saving the American economy, because America had nearly gone bankrupt 4 years earlier. And they played this as though this was a solution to all that. Absolute nonsense, of course. But in America, there were 4 men in particular. I mean, there was a lot of people, but there was 4 in particular that were opposed to the Federal Reserve. not because, not through any altruism for the people, but because they knew that their massive fortunes would be undermined, because the very essence of a central bank is it creates massive inflation. Because, again, I don't want to go too deeply into this, but the way a central bank works is that it lends money at interest to governments. So if, for example, the Bank of England wants another £10 million pumping into the economy, it has to go cap in hand to the Bank of England, who print the money for them and charge them interest on that money as a loan. So this is why national debts exist, nothing to do with imbalances of trade or nothing like that. It's because the way the central bank system works. But again, I'm getting too deep into it, but it's just to give a bit of background. But the four men who violently opposed the Federal Reserve, and they were winning, they were getting on top. It was John Jacob Astor, who made his fortune in hotels and leisure. A guy called Isidor Straus, who was into banking, but he also owned Macy's department store, and a guy called Benjamin Guggenheim, who was into mining and railways, made his fortune with that, and another guy called Charles Lindbergh. This wasn't Charles Lindbergh, the flyer. It was his father, Charles Lindbergh, the guy who was first to fly solo across the Atlantic. That was his son. But it was Charles Lindbergh Sr. Now, they bought Charles Lindbergh off. They paid him $2 million not to publish his book about the Federal Reserve. And $2 million in 1912 was a lot of money. It's a lot of money now, but it was approaching $250 million. So he was paid off. He was out of the question. Which just left the three others. And strangely enough, they all ended up on the Titanic. I believe, I've no proof. I've got proof of a lot of things about Titanic, but I've not got any specific proof about this. But I believe that JP Morgan enticed them on board, and with the view of sinking the ship, getting rid of them, and claiming the insurance on Titanic / Olympic. Problem solved, and that is exactly what happened. And that is a very brief thumbnail sketch of it. There's so much more to it, but it's all in my book.
It's terrifying, though, what people will do for money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these people, they are obsessed with money and power. They are psychopaths, which means that they don't have any conscience, they don't have any empathy, they don't care about me and you. As George Carlin said, it's a big club and we ain't in it. And we're not. They look after their own, very, very much so. And they don't care who they kill. Well, look at 9/11. 3,000 dead, approximately.
Yeah, and then how many died in Iraq because of it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, millions more died in Iraq because of it, didn't they? And yeah, because that was their agenda. That was what they were aiming for. They were aiming, to destroy Iraq, and they did.
And speaking of 9/11, there was obviously a big insurance put on those Twin Towers shortly before, wasn't there? And there was a load of debt that was. I think a lot of the paperwork was maybe in the World Trade Center, number 7. That went down, and with office fires as it happens.
Yeah. Very similar situation to the Titanic, actually, with the insurance. It's as I said before, why change a winning formula? They know what works and they do it. Yeah, because Larry Silverstein, who owned the Twin Towers, he'd upped the insurance a few weeks before it happened, upped it massively. And exactly the same thing happened with Titanic. The White Star Line insured its ships for about 75% of their actual value. Well, Morgan upgraded the insurance on the Titanic 2 weeks before its maiden voyage to 125% of its value. And they paid out within a week.
It's sickening, actually. I shouldn't laugh because it is actually sickening how they get away with this time and time again. I mean, the JFK thing is obviously, in a way, again, is a big life changer because he was opposed, wasn't he, to the Federal Reserve? Wasn't he planning to bring the gold backed dollar in or something? Was something
well, he did. He printed his own money. He bypassed the Federal Reserve. And a few weeks later, that was it. But, I mean, it had been building for a while because the problem with JFK was that he'd made so many enemies. It was just ridiculous. Just about every institution in the States and beyond was after his blood. The FBI hated him, the CIA hated him, big oil, big pharma, Israel, the mafia, even the Catholic Church, believe it or not. He was the first Catholic, probably the only Catholic president there's ever been. But he even upset the Catholic Church because, I mean, I think he was naive, but he was trying to. He was a man of the people. He was a lot of things. He was a womanizer, a philanderer, and he was no saint by any means. But I think his intentions were good, and he tried to clean up American politics, and they don't want that.
No, they do not. I mean, they managed to put a monster in charge pretty quickly, didn't they? Straight after, he was
LBJ, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you wrote the fact that MI6 was very much involved in the Ian Fleming and Roald Dahl.
Well, yeah, my book about the JFK assassination is called JFK: A Very British Coup, and again, long story. It's all in there, but. You see, what most people don't realize, and this is a big shock to a lot of people, especially Americans who tend not to accept it. Apologize to anybody in the States who's watching this, but America is still under the control of Britain. Now, we're told it's the other way around, that we're the 51st state and all this, and what America does, it comes to us, blah, 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 blah. It's just a cover. America never, ever gained its independence from Britain. It was all a sham. And again, I'm not making this stuff up. It's all documented. It's easy to prove. What happened was in 1871, 95 years after the States declared independence, America went bankrupt. It actually physically went bankrupt and it couldn't function. So it came up cap in hand to Britain, and Britain says, no problem, we'll bail you out on one condition. You tear up your constitution and you rewrite the constitution, and that is exactly what they did. And again, this is covered up, but again, it's not difficult to prove. And basically, that put them back under the overt control of Britain. Okay, and so that's the top and bottom of it. And the thing with Kennedy's assassination was that it was all controlled by MI6. It wasn't carried out by MI6. It was carried out by a French team, I believe.
Right.
But again, when you follow the pyramids to the top, all the security services throughout the world all end up at the same point. So they're all controlled from the same apex of the pyramid. So, MI6 might organize it. The French Secret Service might carry it out. The CIA might, facilitate it all. There's all sorts of stuff like that. But this is how the world works. I'm afraid. So.
Yeah, I was going to mention about how these secret services could possibly work together. I mean, they make it out where we're all against each other. KGB and the CIA and this, that, and the other. But they're lockstep, and you can see the way the digital thing's rolling out at the moment. All the countries are lockstep. 2020 was all lockstep.
Yeah.
I think you've recently done a book on the Beyond the Ice Wall as well, haven't you? I mean, there's no the only treaty that every country can agree to is the Antarctica. It's like, well, come on.
Yeah. Well, the Antarctic Treaty. By the way, that book, for anybody who's listening, it's a novel. It's not a factual book, but it's full of truth bombs, basically, and it kind of it's a story, but it's a story based on what myself and Andy, my co-author, believe to be, the real situation. There's some stuff that we've made up, obviously, but there's a lot of historical stuff in there, and as I say, it's full of truth bombs. But yeah, the Antarctic Treaty, which was signed in 1959, I believe that was because as the world shrank, became more of a big village, and it was doing with air travel and everything. And, as technology increased, people could get around the world. It was to stop people going beyond 60 degrees south. And for anybody who doesn't, that's what the book's called, 60 degrees south. For anybody who understands the significance of the 60th parallel south, and that is you are not allowed under any circumstances to go beyond that. Now, before I carry on with that particular theme, people will say to me, and I bet there's people out there listening to this again, my auntie's been on a cruise to the Antarctic. I get this all the time. No, they haven't. I'm sorry to disappoint you. They're told they're in the Antarctic, but they're actually at a place called the Antarctic Peninsula, which, if you look at a map of Antarctica, it's a big thing that sticks up like that. And it's just south of King George Island, which is, about 500 miles south of Tierra del Fuego. You are not allowed to go to Antarctica under any circumstances. They organise cruises there just to let people think, oh, I've been to Antarctica. Well, you kind of have, but you've only been to 62 degrees south. And even then, it's under very controlled conditions. You're not allowed to wander about. You can go there in a controlled party, and you can, but you're not allowed to go inland at all. Anyway, what I was going to say was, so if you try and cross that 60th parallel, either by boat, they will blow you out the water if you don't turn back. And this does happen. We know this happens. There's documented cases of it. If you try and fly, they'll blow you out the sky. And, it begs the massive question why they tell us that they're protecting resources. They tell us that they're protecting the penguins. They come out with all sorts of the usual bullshit, basically. But none of it is true. There is something going on. What that is, obviously, nobody really knows except the people who are perpetrating this stuff. But, it does beg the question, what is beyond 60 degrees south? And I'm pretty sure it ain't the South Pole. So, that's where I'm coming from on that.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, this world will bomb the shit out, every country will bomb the shit out of each other, but yet they can all agree on this treaty and they don't fall out over that. So there's something going on. I mean, you've got to question it, haven't you? It's bizarre. Do you mind if we just go back a little bit though? We're talking about the USA debt, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Because it wasn't that long ago. I don't know if it was the 90s. I think the Chinese bought a lot of debt from from USA as well. And I'm going to look into it in a bit more detail, but it begs the question about how this world seems to be moving very much into this socialist, Marxist kind of ideology, and obviously this 1984-esque surveillance world that we're now finding ourselves with, the potential, if they want to push that, or trying to push it through, of the social credited scores, which the Chinese are doing. It begs the question, how much influence, for me, the Chinese actually have on the Western world if they've got a hold on through buying debt. I'm no expert on this. It's something I want to look at. Have you ever looked at that side of things?
Only briefly, but I mean, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the Chinese I mean, they're trying to take over the world, aren't they? In a kind of a subtle way, maybe not so subtle way. But you're right. I mean, the world is becoming. They're moving us down the road to a communist state, basically. People say to me, communists, these people are fascists. No, they're not. They are not fascists. Fascism is something completely different to what we're told. You get that epithet thrown at you all the time. If you try and, force something on someone, oh, he's a fascist. Absolutely. I'm sorry, if you use that expression, you don't understand what fascism is. It's something completely different. I'm not going to go into that now. That's something that I cover in my books, but I'm not going to go into it now. It's communism, okay? They reverse it, they turn it around, because obviously communism is one end of the spectrum and fascism is the other end, and they call it left and right, which is a load of bollocks. I think it was Dr. Anthony Sutton that said it's not a question of left and right. It's a question of us and them. And that is very true. They use this left-right paradigm, and just another control mechanism. But anyway, digressing as always. Where were we? Yeah, so they're turning the world into a communist state, not a fascist state. You might think what Keir Starmer is up to is fascism. No, it isn't. It's communism. You know, if the Conservative Party were in power, they'd be following exactly the same agenda with a few minor tweaks to make it look as though they do things differently. And that's all politics is. There's no point voting because whoever you vote for, it's pointless because the government always gets in. And that is a truism. And as Billy Connolly once said, don't vote, it only encourages them. And it's true. It's very true. So yeah, sorry, gone off on my soapbox.
No, but it's right, and I was on Gareth Ike's the other day, and one of the questions he asked me was, you know, does voting work? And I said, well, vote harder next time, because obviously it makes no fucking difference, does it? What voting? It just doesn't do a thing at all.
No. And I get people saying, you know, oh, I'm going to vote for Farage. You know, we need some new blood in there. You know, don't bother. He's only controlled by the same entities who sit above here and pull the strings. So nothing will change. The only thing that will change is you're looking at a different face on the television every night. That's all.
It is. It's theatre. It's all just theatre. And
totally.
Keir Starmer is your ideal pantomime villain, I think. There's nothing there. There's no character. There's nothing behind the eyes. He's just rolling out nonsense day by day. And it won't matter. Like when David Cameron was there, you know, he can make a big fucking mess and then he'll just disappear somewhere and they'll just roll out another pantomime villain to take his place. And that's all they do.
Same with Johnson. You know, Johnson was rolled in specifically for the COVID nonsense. I better be careful with that on YouTube. But yeah. And then as soon as that was over, he was off. You know, he was brought in specifically. I'm just editing Dom of Sheep Farm. I'm just editing his book for him, his first book, and he calls Keir Starmer Keir Stalin.
Yeah. I call him Keir Stalin.
Yeah. He said hi, by the way.
Oh, did he? Oh,
yeah, I was
great.
Just talking to him 5 minminutes before I came on. That's why I was a couple of minutes late.
Yeah, we were chatting to Dom last week, Dom and Chris last week, and because we've got this event that I invited you to, the event 101 at the weekend, and Dom and Chris were good enough to invite. Well, I think it was my friend John Cooper that got in touch with Dom and Chris, and we ended up on there with Callie as well. Callie was on there as well.
Right.
So yeah, that was they're great guys, the Sheep Farm guys. Yeah, the fabulous guys, and very intelligent as well. And they dig deep into stuff in a very intelligent way. It must be you Yorkshire lot, I think. You know, you must be.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that I think us Northern lot though we tend to dust ourselves off a little bit easier. I think when it comes to these things, and we can get into the nitty gritty of it a little bit more. I reckon.
Yeah.
But speaking of 9/11 again, I know I'm going back a little bit, but it's events like 9/11. This is what I get a little bit frustrated with, the fact that these events are forgotten. You know, events like 9/11, that's a massive event in our lifetime, and you know, and it changed the world. The 90s, I remember enjoying the 90s quite a lot, really, in terms of it seemed there were more freedom. Maybe it's because I was, you know, quite out there at the time, and you know, in my teens and my early 20s, and I was taking drugs and doing whatever I could get up to at the time. But I felt my life was freer. But after 9/11 and the Patriot Act came in, the world definitely changed. Now, that event, like you say, 3,000 plus people lost their lives potentially there, and a million Iraqis, but nobody talks about it. anymore. It's
yeah,
like it's disappeared. Well, I'm
yeah.
sorry, I can't allow that to disappear. Like I won't allow 2020 to disappear because like people will come to me and say, "Why are you still going on about it? It's like 5 years ago."
Mm,
I'm sorry, I lost everything fighting against that bullshit, and I ain't gonna just
no,
let it lie when, say, my stepfather lost his life because of the medical interventions that they rolled out and this, that, why should I ever forget what the likes of Hancock and Johnson and Whitty have
Cummings.
done? Cummins, all of these cretins. How
Yeah,
could I ever forget that? I can't.
no, I don't,
Can't let it go.
absolutely. But I'll tell you what, they don't let you forget the Second World War. I mean, notice how that's still pushed in our faces.
Isn't it just?
Documentaries, interviews. Every anniversary is just saturation coverage. They don't do that with anything else because, well, this is not the platform for going into whys and wherefores of that. But yeah, there is a big
Well,
reason for that, and maybe on a different platform we'll talk about it another time. But
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll touch on it because without having to say the words, but it's clearly pushes towards the anti-Semitic kind of thing, isn't it? Where you are not allowed to say these things because you are then an anti-Holocaust, you're a Holocaust denier, you're this, that, and the other, and you are vilified, and
yeah,
you daren't question a narrative as big as that.
no.
Then you are. I mean, you must have been, because I know that you've written about this. So that must have been a really difficult period for you, where you must have had people pointing fingers.
Oh, it still is. I mean, I get cancelled everywhere because of it.
Yeah,
Oh no, even from truth groups. Believe it or not, I've had truth groups cancel on me because I am a
yeah,
HD.
yeah. It's mad though, isn't it? But
You see, I only do it with the facts to back it up. I don't just pull it out of thin air or from up my sleeve. It's not up there.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
actual, proper research, proper detailed research. And not just me. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, other people who've done it before me.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so. But no, it doesn't bear any kind of research at all, I'm afraid.
Well, it frightens people though, John, doesn't it? Let's be honest. When you're in school, you're taught this. This is obviously it's a big event. It's one of the great events, I suppose, in human history in the past 100 years. So
Yeah,
that is taught in schools. We're taught about our freedom and this and
yeah,
the other. All this kind of malarkey.
yeah.
You daren't say that we've been lied to there. And because that the cognitive dissonance that then people can't handle that. That's a really tricky place for them to step into or step out of, I should
Definitely,
say. A really
definitely.
tricky one. It's
And of course, and not in this country at the moment, but in most countries in Europe, it's illegal to say it even.
really.
Yeah, you can get jailed in several countries in Europe just for kind of saying that in public,
Wow, didn't
and
know that.
people have been.
It's frightening, John, though, isn't it? That you can't. This is the thing about politics and state control and things like that, and that's the danger that this Marxist, socialist, communist push could potentially take humanity to. I fear. I'm not living in fear, by the way, because I don't believe they're going to get through what they want to get through. But
Yeah,
if anything, I fear for my children's
yeah,
futures
yeah.
and their children's futures if we don't stand up now and push back against this ideology and this madness.
Mm,
Hence the digital ID you mentioned before, that it does work pushing back. I think it's imperative
mm.
that people that are aware of what's going on in this and
Well,
the dangers that represents, we push back.
if enough people refuse it, where are they going to go? They can't. They can't.
Exactly.
They can't disenfranchise all of us. It's just not. Society wouldn't work. But that's the
No.
problem, isn't it? Getting the numbers big enough.
Well, this is why the awareness is important right now. I think that's where there's campaigns going on that need to be widespread. I've been saying, it's people in the street you need to talk to. It's those in the street that don't know. It's like, how do you then go, listen, this digital ID, okay, this is what generally could happen here. There's a mission creep. They love a good mission creep, don't they? Our governments, they'll implement something. It's just this. It's just to allow people to work, so we can deal with the migrant situation. And this,
I have never heard anything more bloody ridiculous in my entire life, and that's up against some pretty stiff competition. Honestly, to prevent the illegal, all they need to do is stop the bloody boat.
But they don't want to, do they, John?
No, they don't want to. Of course, they don't. No.
Well, we're talking Kalergi, are we not?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Kalergi. Indeed.
Because if you can eradicate culture, it's about stopping culture, isn't it? And everyone becomes one in a way.
It's homogenizing the human race basically, because they want us all like grey robots, just falling into line with their plans and just doing their every bidding. They don't want an intelligent, rational people who are able to think clearly and resist what they're bringing about. They just want, like I said, these homogenized grey robots that, metaphorically speaking, I don't mean physically. So yeah, that's what it's all about. It's diluting the human gene pool, basically.
Absolutely. I do believe in the human spirit, though, John. I do believe that they'll falter. I don't.
Yeah.
There's an awareness been happening, like I said before, about 2020 definitely started triggering people's subconscious a little bit that something was wrong. That they were being lied to. That happened more and more. I think this digital ID thing is going to do the same again. I think it will actually backfire a little bit and unite more people again. I think more people will start going, hold on a minute, left, right, centre, what religion, whatever, we don't want this, and I think we'll hopefully we're going to see that. So and you did write a book about COVID, didn't you? I know I can't talk about it much on the YouTube platform because I do enjoy they've lessened it a little bit recently, but you can't trust YouTube platform, unfortunately, to do it. But do you see that what happened in 2020 is a prelude coming into what we're now seeing 5 years later?
I do. I think the world changed dramatically. You said about the world change after 9/11. Well, I think it changed again even more dramatically after 2020. When you look back to 2019 and 2018 and before that, obviously, the world was a completely different place. We now live in a very, it's in some ways it's hardly noticeable, but in other ways, it sticks out like a sore thumb to me. I can't define it, but everything seems more, what's the word I'm looking for? Insecure. I feel like we're living on a bit of a knife edge all the time. What they're going to do next, what they're going to bring in next. And this is where the fear thing comes in. And I don't want that. I don't want fear in my life. So I do. This is why I don't watch mainstream, really, because it just triggers me sometimes. But yeah, getting off the topic again. Since 2020, the world has changed very much, and it is to do with something called Agenda 2030. It used to be Agenda 21, but they canned that, and it's now Agenda 2030. And I think Mr. Schwab talked about that, didn't he? He said by 2030, you will own nothing, not even the clothes you stand up in, and you will be happy. And this is their goal. That is their what's the word? The company.
The Great Reset.
Yeah, the Great Reset. No, there's a phrase for it, and it's like
the system. Yeah, so it's all the sustainability goals, isn't it? That they're laying out there as well, and but ultimately, connected to climate change agenda. all of it's connected, and it's 2020 was like a normalization, wasn't it? They were a testing ground really to see how people would react to certain behavioral patterns.
That's right. But sorry to interrupt, Ant, but what I was going to say was it was a slight failure for them, right? They intended it to go on till this year, till 2025. There was a document called the Rockefeller Lockstep document, and that laid out from 2014. They put this in writing in this document because they love telling us what they were going to do, because they believe, I'm not saying that we believe it, but they believe that by telling us what they're going to do, it absolves them from any bad karma.
Yeah.
And so this is why they do it, and it seems so crazy to us, but they really believe this, that they can get away with doing anything as long as they put it right in front of our faces. So that's what they do. So they produced this document called the Lockstep document, and this was freely available at one point. I don't know how it was leaked onto the internet, but it became available. It was written in 2014, and it put exactly the steps that they were going to take with the pandemic, and when it was going to start, when it was going to end, and it was due to end in 2025. But they had to curtail it. Why did they have to curtail it? Well, it's only my opinion, but I believe it was because they realized that they'd overstepped the mark and they were waking people up. And believe me, it woke a hell of a lot of people up. Maybe that was intentional. I don't know for sure, but I suspect it wasn't. A lot of people said to me, I think it's intentional. I think they want people to wake up. I think, why would they do it? Why would they want that? Surely they want the opposite. But who knows? I don't know. But I think they had realised they overstepped the boundaries. They were trying to move the agenda along too quickly because they knew they missed the Agenda 21 deadline, perhaps. And so they thought, right, we better get to work because we're not on schedule here. So I think they stepped it up too quickly, and they curtailed it in 22 instead of 25.
It definitely felt rushed. Whatever they were playing at the time, it definitely felt rushed, and they were really pushing it.
Yeah.
I would go along with that, and
right.
They clearly have a time frame that they're trying to achieve this thing, and I think that's why we're now seeing a halfway point. There's a bit of a lockstep around the world regarding the digital infrastructure. You've got, Trump. Trump is the Mr. Polarization, isn't he? In the truther community, where people sometimes see this character as a hero. I don't personally go down that route. I think it's a bloodline that's probably seeing this agenda coming through as the Palantir, the AI infrastructures that they're developing and bringing into the consciousness now. People are expecting to see this happen, and he's the main figurehead behind it. Plus his links with Israel and the way he's now. I don't know if you saw this, John, because I know you don't watch the news. I don't watch the news, but on Twitter, I read the fact that he's planning on, where Palestine's concerned, Tony Blair is going to be installed as like a bit of a head of the ruling of that area. He's going to be involved. There's going to be a consortium of these. Let's throw the devil in hell, shall we? I mean, he may as well. It's just quite ludicrous, really, how this works out. But, however, how do you figure this Q movement out? Have you looked into that?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I honestly don't know what the answer is. I mean, lots and lots of people think Trump's the savior and Trump and Q are coming on to save the world, but I can't get away from the idea that it's just a psyop. My view is that it's there to make us think, don't worry about it, guys. It's all being taken care of. Trump's going to come riding through on his white Charger, and he's made a start. Now he's taking time, but he's getting there and he's doing this. And to be fair, he is doing some things that you think, well, that really doesn't fit the jigsaw puzzle. It doesn't fit in the agenda in some way. And he does do things like that, but then he does something completely the opposite. And then it's a case of like the Q people saying, well, yeah, he's had to do that because, he doesn't want to give them the impression that, it's all going against them. And, I just think, honestly, I don't know. I think it's just there to divide and conquer, basically. It's there to make people think that they don't have to do anything, so they can just forget about it all and let history take its course, and also to divide the truth movement, I think, as well. And it's been very successful in doing that, of course.
Absolutely, like I say, Mr. Polarization.
Yeah.
So I had a pub during 2020, John. We signed for the pub the day they shut the pubs, and we used to have we called it a Truther Tuesday. And it was a very, very busy evening because people would come from all over the place, but Trump was the one that would cause the most arguments in the bar. And you could see the split that character was creating. And I think my feeling is Q was probably originally maybe had its proper formation at the beginning, but was maybe infiltrated and now is being used, like you say, a savior.
This is what they do, isn't it? Yeah,
it's what they do. Yeah. And people just generally will go, no, trust the plan. It's all in order. Everything's fine. But if we just completely trust, are we going to stand up against anything?
Exactly. Yeah. So
and that is a danger. So, I know you've not been looking into. Do you feel that digital ID is not going to go through? I mean, I'm
not saying that. I'm saying I'm not sure that it is. I don't think that it isn't. I'm not sure either way, really. I'm saying there's a chance that it won't, because I've been there and done that over the years, and these things. They were talking about World War III back in like 2001. And it's like, oh yeah, World War III is coming around the corner, and everybody's going, oh Christ, World War III, we'll all be nuked. And it's just, it never happens. It never happens.
Well, they want us in fear, don't they? I mean, we're going back to the beginning of the chat, but this is what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah. Everything comes down to that. Everything. That's what all these false flags are about. To a dual thing, to increase the fear factor, to make us more dependent on them, using the Hegelian dialectic, and also to further their agenda. Which is the big thing, really.
Isn't it a cruel world, though, John? The fact that we have to even be having these discussions, really, it makes it a cruel world. Why are we having to discuss the fact that they're putting the populations in fear, to control us? It doesn't add up for me. It's like a true human being. Like I couldn't harm someone else.
No.
I don't understand how these bloodlines, I know you were talking power, greed and everything, but they're not like you and I, are they?
No,
they're not.
No, they're a different breed altogether. I mean, like I said before, the psychopaths, they don't possess empathy. They don't possess, human compassion. They're just focused on power and money, and that's it. And they think that's okay. They actually believe that is the right way to be. And they just see us as a kind of an irrelevance, an irritant. And they just want us out of the way. And this is, what the depopulation agenda is all about. And it's coming about more quickly now. See, again, what happened in 2020 to 22 was part of the depopulation agenda. There's far more of that to come, by the way, in terms of the effects of the arms spears.
I know.
The excess deaths are just going to go. But anyway, there's nothing we can do about it. We just got to suck it up. But I forgot what I was going to say now.
It's literally a bonkers world, though. There's.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. It's crazy. I think, and again, this is not just me saying this. This is something that quite a lot of people in our world tend to agree with, and that is that we have been placed here for a reason. You know, the likes of the people in the truth movement. We're here at this particular time because we're fighting this evil that is going on, which has increased exponentially throughout our lifetimes, hasn't it? When you look back to the 80s and 70s, and I don't know whether you're around in the 70s, but I was. But when you look back at those times, they were quite, and it's not just nostalgia. They were quite idyllic, really, compared to what we've got now. I'm not saying there was no problems. Of course, there were. But generally, people were a lot happier, a lot more content. And, you know, life was a lot simpler, more enjoyable. Now it's like it's a constant struggle, isn't it? You know, and it's not just about money struggles. It's just about getting by without fear. You know, without being filled full of fear all the time, because that's all they do. And I'd probably just think it's because they're just up in the agenda. You know, they are working to a kind of a deadline, 2030, and you know they're pushing like crazy for it. And as they get nearer that deadline, the heat is being turned up.
It's when we're talking about. Sorry, John.
Water. Sorry.
So I was just thinking, just when we were talking about these sort of like bloodline type, elitist type people, even the politicians, where they're not the same as us, and they're quite happy to sleep well at night. It seeps into certain roles in the population as well. You know, the way the police behaved in 2020, the way some of the scientists and doctors were behaving in society at that time. So it can still bleed into what, you know, you would hopefully perceived as good people.
Yeah.
But then those people are sleeping well at night, cracking heads in Trafalgar Square, when all people want to do is say, you know, we don't want to be locked up because this is nonsense. It's the human. I think we're very detached actually from who we truly are and what we're truly about as human beings. It's been eradicated for years and years, and I think we need to remember who we are before we can really resolve this mess that they've put us in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you know, to talk about their lackeys like the police and the army and the armed forces and the sciences, you know, they use these people, but they propagandize them. You know, you try and reason with those people, and they're just completely closed-minded. They're propagandized, and also, you know, the ones that aren't maybe quite so propagandized live in fear of their livelihoods. You know, if you've got a family and a big mortgage, and you're depending on your job for your day-to-day existence, it's a very hard thing to do, to go against the establishment. And full credit to the few people that have done that. You know, there's lots of doctors that went through hell. I was talking at a event in Ireland in August, and I stayed with a guy called Dr. Jerry Murphy, and he was one of the ones that spoke out against COVID and got struck off. And you know, he was telling me all that story. I won't go into it now, but probably got away with it on YouTube anyway. But yeah, I mean, you know, he was a very, very brave man. He basically lost everything, you know, lost absolutely everything, and is still fighting the Irish Medical Council.
It's really sad, isn't it, John? You know, it can be a very cruel world, really. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, where do we go really with this, John? I mean, I've thought about like how do we kind of, you know, communities are going to be of some description important, but I look at the truth the movement as we both touched on now in terms of the cultish behavior of that truth movement and the paranoia, you know, the attacks that you receive for just saying something that they don't agree with. I've been on the receiving end of stuff like that myself, and it's not nice. And I see it more and more now on social media than ever before. They seem to have a winning hand at the moment because they've split us so much. Yes, 2022, they wanted to go to 2025, and they ended that period in 22. But almost this lull period of 3 years has allowed for a load of infighting and division within what was a growing group of people on a common goal of freedom. So it'd be interesting to see how we can unite again now, because I think that's really important. Do you see that happening?
I think there's just to comment on what you just said there, and I think there's always been infighting in the truth movement, but I think it's been magnified by the fact that so many people have woken up since 2020. So that's kind of given more opportunity because there's more people, therefore there's more opinions and more disagreements. So I think it's always been there, but it has been magnified in the last few years without a doubt. Where do we go from here? Your guess is as good as mine, really. But again, I get asked this question a lot of times. What can I do, John? You write books, give talks, you do podcasts. I can't do any of that. I'm not capable of doing it. No, you're not, maybe, but you are capable of talking to people in a rational way. I'm not pretending it's easy, but just when you get the opportunity, don't go at it like a bull in a china shop, like I did for several years and got got blasted and nearly had a nervous breakdown over it. But just do it in a rational way and just kind of just chip away at it. Just talk to people. Most of the time they'll call you an idiot or tell you to sod off or whatever. But that's how we can get bigger numbers. People will wake up eventually. There's something called the 100th monkey syndrome. Are you aware of that 100th monkey syndrome? I spoke a little bit about that at the conference that I was at in Ireland. And for those who are not aware, and this is a widely accepted scientific fact, but it's totally unexplainable. The scientists have no explanation for it. And what happens is, and the analogy is monkeys, when a group of monkeys learns a new skill, for example, a bit of a cliche, but breaking coconuts or nuts open with a sharp rock. Okay. Once a certain percentage of that species acquires that skill, and again, as I said, nobody knows how it happens, but it does happen. It's proven to happen. All of a sudden, every single member of that species somehow, in some way, acquires that skill. So if you relate that to our situation, if we can, as truthers, can convince just a few of our friends, and their friends can convince a few of their friends to start looking into what's really happening in the world. And again, I'll emphasize it's not easy, but this is how we'll do it. Eventually, there will be a tipping point, and that tipping point will mean that all of a sudden, every single human in the world will be aware of what is really happening. And I really believe that is the only way that we're going to win this war. And it is a war.
It is a war.
It's a war. It's an information war. But yeah, that's my only solution. And it might not be very thrilling or exciting, but I can't see any other way. We certainly can't fight them. Not that I'd want to, but if we tried to arm ourselves and go against them, we'd be obliterated in minutes. So that's
it doesn't need to be. It's exactly what you say, And my missus, sadly, she's disabled. She's got health problems, and she was saying, what can I do? And I said the same thing, John. I said, look, you're very good at red pilling. When we go to the supermarket, she'll be the first one to tell the cashier about what's going on. We were in Asda the other day, and You've probably seen them. You've got cameras on them now, as you're going through, and you're being filmed at every spot. And we pulled the guy over and said, "Look, where does this data go?" Is that what you're on about? So yeah, that's me on that camera. That I have a right to know where that is going. And he says, "You've got a phone. There's no difference." So the difference is I've got a choice. I don't have to turn my phone on. I don't have to have the phone, but I have no choice if I come into here and you've got a camera pointing at me, and in the GDPR kind of thing, that's my data. I want to know where that's going. He's like, oh. But these are little moments where you start putting a little bit of a seed in and they start questioning these things.
Yeah, you're right. It's about planting seeds, isn't it? And that's very well, good analogy. It's about planting seeds in people. Sometimes I go in a shop and it says cash only, cash is king. And I always comment on that. I always say, fantastic, I'll come back here. I said, that's exactly what we want. And then get them talking. And usually they start talking about it. Oh yeah, once we got rid of cash, that's it. We're doomed, aren't we? And I go, yeah. And sometimes we get into a bit of a conversation, talk, and you go on to other subjects and you plant little seeds, and that's how you do it. You don't go in at it like full tilt, like saying the world's run by a load of psychopaths and blah 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 blah. That's not the way to do it, obviously. But yeah, it is. It's all about planting seeds.
In terms of the people that are just on the awakening path right now, what book would you recommend that you've written for them?
No, definitely the falsification of history. That's the starting point. That is, I wrote that with kind of beginners in mind. People who are just starting to question things. That was my aim when I wrote the book. I thought, yeah, if I had that guidebook when I was first waking up, I thought to myself, my process would have been a lot easier, a lot smoother. I'm not saying, I'm not blowing my own trumpet here. I'm just saying that any book that does what falsification history does would have had that effect on me, So definitely that, yeah. It's still selling well, and some of it is a bit outdated now, but it gets fantastic reviews, and and I can't count the number of people who emailed me or contacted me in some way and said that book changed my life, John.
That's fantastic, John. That's fantastic.
I just feel so proud that I've actually been able to do that, and so gratified. And I don't want to blow my own trumpet or anything, but it does make you feel proud.
But you should be, John, because there's not enough happening on that level, is there? But I'm glad there's a John Hamer that's been doing that, and there's a David Icke that's been doing his bit, and so on and so on. These areas are important because we are educated, aren't we? We're educated so much that these kind of books are almost heresy. It's like touching on these subjects can be tricky, like you say. So anyone who's starting to question the narrative needs maybe that you'll guide them into other areas because history. If we don't know our true history, we don't know who we are. If we don't know where we've come from, how do we know who we are and where we're going?
Yeah, well, I actually, that's absolutely true. I just going back to falsification of history. What I was also going to say was, I actually found out last year that book was actually on the history curriculum at Exeter University a few years ago.
Amazing! That's so good.
Believe it, but I'll tell you who told me that because he was on that course. Do you know? Have you ever come across the YouTube channel Jeff Buys Cars?
No, I've not seen that. No,
I'll
have to have a look.
It's a great channel. He's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and he's interviewed me. It was him that told me.
Right.
But it's a great channel, and I would definitely recommend anybody out there subscribing to him. He's a good bloke. He talks about cars. That's what the theme is. But he's a truther, and he brings all sorts of stuff into it.
That's
A bit like me
great.
with my book 60 Degrees South, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a disguised truth manual, if you like. And it's the
And
same.
I think that's amazing that it was brought into a curriculum, though. I mean, can you
Wow.
imagine if your book was put into schools up and down the country? How amazing would that be? That would change. That would change things, wouldn't it?
Just a bit, yeah. But that ain't going to happen, is it?
Not yet, though, John.
One day, when I'm dead and gone, mate, when I'm 6 foot under.
You must be. You must feel proud. I think that's great that you said
I
that,
do.
though, because at the end of the day, when we do leave this mortal coil, as they say, it's nice to leave some kind of legacy in some way, isn't it? And if you've got 9 books there. I presume you're going to continue writing, are you?
Yeah, we're on number 10 now. We're Andy and I, the co-author, we're writing a sequel to 60 Degrees South. The working title at the moment is 100 Degrees South, but we don't know whether that's going to be the final one. But which, when you think about it, there is no 100 Degrees South. So what's that about? Yeah, well.
Wouldn't it be cool to get over there, though? Wouldn't it be amazing just to
Yeah,
find out what is actually beyond that
yeah,
area?
yeah. I mean, there's so many celebs that go there, you know.
Is there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially senior politicians, they spend a lot of time in Antarctica.
Really?
So they're allowed to, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, not making it up. It's all out there.
I believe Bill Gates buried a load of seeds out there as well. I remember reading a few years ago, and
One night in the Arctic.
I don't.
Start a seed bank in the Arctic.
I might be wrong, but I'm sure it was Bill Gates
Yeah, I think it was.
that buried a load of different seeds up that end or something. But
Yeah, I think he started a seed bank in the Arctic.
yeah, what's
But
that
you're
all
not allowed
about,
to fly
John?
over the Arctic either. Why?
Exactly why?
What's going on?
What do you think's out there then? What's your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that it's the Earth is either not. The Earth is either much bigger than they tell us it is, which I think is very plausible because in the book we printed a map that hangs in the lobby of the UN building in New York, and it's a map which shows the Earth as we know it like that, and then all around here there are dozens of other continents and oceans. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's that the Earth is a lot bigger than we're told. Who knows why or what that's all about. I don't know, but it's possible. Maybe there are civilizations out there. Maybe that's where aliens live. I'm not into alien stuff at all. I don't research it. I feel as though it's a bit. There's certainly something going on. You see these, films, and they're not all faked. I'm not that stupid to think that. But where do they come from? I've got a friend who lives in Lancashire, who's actually seen one close up.
Really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I trust him implicitly. He's not the sort of guy to make stuff like that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's something going on. Maybe that's where they come from. Who knows? It's all a big mystery.
Very interesting. Very interesting. But this is the thing. What we know. I keep saying this. I don't know what this realm is, but I know we're lied to.
No, definitely.
I'm more of, I think I'm a denier of the globe itself because I'm lied to, whereas I don't have an answer to what this is I may never know because I can't prove it.
I'm the same.
But I don't like being lied to, John. I think that's the thing. I think that's when you start being a conspiracy theorist kind of thing. It's like I want to know more because I'm sick to death of being lied to. And I think going back to 2020, I'm going on about it, but I hate being lied to, and it was clear we were being lied to, and it was driving me insane because I'm thinking, you're going to affect my kids here. You know what I mean? This is damaging to my children because of the lies, and
and sadly, they're already massively damaged by the education system as well.
Hugely. It's as I am, as a lot of us are,
Obviously.
And then
since I was at school, but yeah, I'm sure I was propagandized. Yeah.
it's part
avoid it.
it's part of the control, isn't it? You know, but when
Yeah.
like you say right at the beginning, you had your trigger moment with Princess Diana of questioning something isn't right in this reality.
That's
And then
right.
when you start digging deeper, you go, well, we've been lied to. And we've
Massive.
been had. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that there's probably more things are not as they say they are than are real. You know, just about every event. It might not be an out and out lie, but it's certainly
Mm.
not didn't happen in the way that they tell us because they bend everything to fit their own agenda.
Don't
So
they
some
just?
things are completely made up, like the certain event during the war that we talked about very briefly earlier, completely made up. And there are other things that are just partially made up,
Yeah.
and very, very few things that are not made up at all. Because at the
Yeah.
end, it's a glib saying, but history is written by the victors. So it's a very
History.
coloured view of what happened, you know, and even going back into the Middle Ages, you know, talk about the Wars of the Roses and stuff like that. You know, there was a lot of deception going on then, and you know, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
stuff that happened then was coloured by the people who were in charge at that time.
I've had Michelle Gibson on. I don't know if you ever looked into Michelle Gibson's work, and she's
Yeah,
yeah, she's fabulous, Michelle. She's out in the States. She's got a big channel, and she digs deep into history and how humanity has been hijacked, if you like, in the past, because history is a lie, obviously, and
yeah,
his
yeah,
story. And she talks about a lot about the Moors. They were a more prevalent race, if you like, and humanity lived a much better life
yeah,
before there was a hijacking of some description. There's a reset, you know, as they
yeah,
keep talking about these resets, don't they?
yeah.
That is, it's interesting, and I think you're right before where you were saying old souls. I think that is something where maybe we've
Mm.
been here before, we've done it before, and we're maybe
We have this
recognizing
innate
it.
feeling that things aren't right. I mean, I don't know about you, Anne, but when I was growing up, I was a rebel, and I've come across a lot of people in this sphere that say exactly the same thing. I just wouldn't accept anything at face value at all, and I used to get
Yeah.
into terrible trouble at school because I used to ask a question of the teachers and they couldn't answer it. I used to say, why this, why that? Oh, shut up and get on with your work. You know,
Yeah, don't ask questions.
no, that's it.
But that's the education, isn't it? That's what they want. This is the
Yeah,
truth. Go along with it. Trust the plan.
just the thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Don't
John,
question.
it's been an absolute honor, but can you let people know where people can support your work, where they can buy your books, obviously? Where's the best place for them to go?
Well, if you're in the UK, the best place to go is my website, where you can buy all my books online, and you'll get signed copies. Okay, if you're interested in that kind of thing. Some people aren't bothered. If you're not bothered, then, or if you're elsewhere in the world, then you need to go to Amazon dot wherever you are, and all my just put my name in the search bar, and all my books will come up. There is another author called John Hamer who writes religious books, and that's not me. And sometimes people
Okay.
get confused about that. But I think he's Canadian or American or something. But that's not me. My books are, obviously all to do with what we've been talking about. So yeah, but yeah, first stop and the best stop, as far as I'm concerned, is my website, because obviously Amazon take a big cut. But
Yeah.
they're a necessary evil when you're an author. You can't exist without them. You know, you just
Where the world is, John, isn't it? It's the
yeah,
way the world's
absolutely,
gone.
yeah. So yeah, I would prefer you bought from my website, and you get the added bonus of having my signature or any personal message that you want in there. You just tell me.
Yeah.
Um, but failing that, Amazon, yeah, it's slightly cheaper on Amazon because obviously I have to charge postage. They include the postage, and they also undercut me as well. So
Do they?
if I put my book for sale on Amazon at say 25 quid, which the big thick ones are,
Hmm.
they will sell them for £22 sometimes. They just do it in little batches, and they just, and then if I put their prices down, they will, which I don't, but they would undercut me again. It's just how they operate. They're just crooks. Sorry, you're really nice people. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's the place.
Everything's for testing us, isn't it, John? But yeah, I'll make sure that the links to your website are in the show notes below.
Yeah,
so obviously it's better if people would order directly from yourself and support your work. Have you got any other plans? I know you're writing your 10th book, but have you got any other plans?
I've just been having kind of a sabbatical for the last couple of months because we were on holiday in September. We went to Italy. But we had such a busy year. I say we, myself and my wife, because she comes everywhere with me. We go around the country doing talks and conferences. And we had such a busy first half of the year up until kind of the end of July that we just got to start. I can't keep up the pace. I'm getting too old for this. So we've had a couple of months doing nothing, and I said, right, well, we'll start again beginning of October, and here we are. So I've started with podcasts. I'm doing one with Sheep Farm Guys on Tuesday again. I'm doing a James Delingpole one again next week at some point, and I'm going to ring round a few of my contacts for doing stand-up talks and get some engagements, and again, all those venues will be on my website when that's sorted. But it's a case of the next few weeks just building things up again to Christmas, and then start again in the new year. So
keep putting
non-stop, mate. Honestly, it really is. But it's fun. I enjoy it. I mean, I should be retired now at my age, but I can't.
Well, you know what, John, I really appreciate not only you being on, but the work that you put in, because it is helping humanity. It's planting the very important seeds as we try and push back against what really is a dark force that's controlling humanity. And it's time for us to stand up against this and realize who we are really, and like the work that you've put in is what allows us to start remembering. So.
Definitely.
Thank you for everything you've done, mate, and I hope to speak to you again in the future. And I'll have to catch you on a talk at some point. I'll keep my eye on that and come and see you.
Yeah, well, whereabouts in Lancashire are you? How do you not want to say it on
air? Near Preston.
Right. Okay. Well, I talk probably at least once a year, but usually twice a year in St Anne's.
Oh, New Horizons.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to catch you at New Horizons one night then. I'll have to come
definitely.
up.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have a pint after.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Well, you know what, John? It's been an honour, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anne. It's been my pleasure, mate. Lovely to talk to you.